One of my favorite flipping strategies is what I've coined the takedown method. Now, the takedown method is simply buying a property at a discount, not doing anything or very little to the property, and then putting it back up for sale and selling it on the open market to a retail buyer. Some people call that wholesaling. I like takedown method because it just sounds way cooler. What I want to do on this video is I want to break down the numbers so that you can understand what makes a good takedown deal and how do I figure out the math so that I can buy right and be successful. Okay, so first thing we're going to look at here with the takedown method is the as-is value of the property. Now for flippers, this is a completely different shift in mindset because we are not looking at after repair value. After repair value is what's the property worth once I fix it up. After it's fixed up and it sells on the open market as a fully renovated home at top price, that's after repair value, ARV. We are looking at as-is value or the current value of the property as it sits in its current condition. Okay, that's a different value to a property as is versus ARV. So remember, we're looking at the as-is value of the property. Then what we're gonna do is if we're gonna buy it at a discount, we need to buy it at enough of a discount so that way when we resell it, we cover all of our cost and make a profit. So the idea here is that we quickly get it and quickly get out of it. My goal with my takedown deals is like 90 days. 60 to 90 days is what I'm aiming for on a takedown. Because remember, I'm not renovating the house. Maybe I'll clean it or do a trash out, but I'm not fixing it up. I'm reselling it to the market in its current condition. Make sense? Okay, so we're gonna take the as is, we're gonna take a percentage of that off the top, and that's gonna equal our buy price. So how do we figure out the percentage that we take off the top? Well, I look at three different things when I do a takedown deal. I'm gonna look at my cost. I like to budget on every takedown deal 10% of the as-is value to cover my cost. That cost is financing cost to borrow the money to buy it. That's closing cost. That's maybe cleaning and a trash out. Okay, so my cost is everything it's gonna cost me to buy, own, and prep that property for resale. Next cost is profit. Now, my budget on a deal is I wanna make a 10% of the value, of the current value, 10% of that in profit. And that's easy, it's just whatever we resell it for, whatever that as-is value is, 10% of that number I want to be my profit. And then I have a third category here, and that's a buffer. What happens if things don't go according to plan? And that's a 10% buffer, just in case things don't work out, in case it sells for less than I thought, in case a buyer asks for concessions, in case I hold it for 120 days instead of 90 days, right? I wanna have room in the deal for things that are unforeseen. So if I add up all three of these, that's 30% off the top of the as-is value, or 70%. Now, again, don't confuse this with 70% of ARV less repairs. That's the fix and flip formula. That's not what this is. This is just 70% of the current as-is value. If I can buy it that deep, then I've got myself a good deal. Again, where's the 30% that we take off the top? 10% cost, 10% profit, 10% buffer. Now let's do a scenario here so you can see how the math plays out. Let's say that the as-is value of this property is $300,000. If I take $300,000 and I multiply that by 70%, that gets me to $210,000. That means I would buy it for $210,000 and I would sell it for $300,000. That's it, that's all I'm doing. Buying it for $210,000, direct to seller, off market, putting it back up for sale, and I'm selling it to the open market for $300,000. All I did was buy a discounted property and resold it. You know, buy low, sell higher. That's all this is. And we do it again and again and again. So if I can get a distressed property, a motivated seller willing to let this deal go for $210,000, it's worth $300,000, all I'm doing is reselling it. Well, where's the $90,000 come from? Well, let's do the math. It's pretty simple. It's gonna be $30,000 in cost, it's gonna be $30,000 in profit, and $30,000 in buffer. 30, 30, 30. 90,000 is my difference between 300 and 210. 30,000 of that goes right to cost to buy that property. 30,000 goes right to my profit, and 30,000 goes into the unforeseens. So let's say there are no unforeseens. Let's say I buy it for 210, it's totally clean, I don't gotta do anything. All I do is resell it for 300. Well, then this buffer number rolls into where? Profit, baby. I just made $60,000 instead of $30,000. So in this scenario, worst case I'm trying to make is 30, best case I make 60. Why? Because I didn't have any buffer unforeseen. But let's say stuff happens. Let's say that I only get 290. Let's say that I have a buyer and they're like, man, I want you to give me $8,000 in concessions because it needs some work done. Let's say that I don't sell it in 60 days, but it takes me longer to get it sold. I pay more in financing, so my cost goes up a little bit. I may have to chew into this $30,000 buffer. But here's the thing, guys, I want to mitigate my risk. When you buy property and you buy a house and you take ownership and you take title and you borrow money to buy it, you take on risk now because now you own it and you financed it. I want to make sure that if I'm going to buy a piece of property, even if my intent is just to resell it as fast as possible, that I've got a good margin on that deal. And that margin, I believe, is 70%. Now, let's say that you run the gamut. Let's say that you buy at 80%. Might still work because at 80%, what are you going to be at? Let's do the math. 300,000 times 0.8 is going to be 240. So you buy it here at 240. Well, at 240, if you buy it at 80%, it might still work. It might only cost you 30,000 in cost, 30,000 in profit. You have no hiccups along the way, and it works out great. And you bought it at 80%, you paid 240, sold it for 300, and made 30. The problem here, again, is this is too risky. I don't want to be at 80%. I don't have any room for things to go wrong. I want to have room for things to go wrong. If nothing goes wrong, I make 30. If everything goes perfect and nothing goes wrong, I make 60. See how that works? And this takedown method is brilliant. This is genius. You know why? I'm not rehabbing houses. I'm just buying and selling real estate. And it's not wholesaling where I got to deal with disclosure. I got to deal with licensing in some states. I got to deal with regulation. I got to deal with dispo process where I got to find a cash buyer. And when I do the takedown deal, check this out, guys. I make 2 to 4 times more profit. 2 to 4 times more profit. Look at this scenario. I'm getting it at 210. Rather than wholesaling it for 220 to somebody, I got to leave enough room in there for them to make money. And maybe I make 10 or 15. Now I make 30 on the low side, 60 on the high side, doing the takedown. All I did differently, I still contracted a good deal. The difference is rather than assign it to somebody else where I got to leave room for them to make money, I buy it, I take it down, I fund it, I resell it, and I get the big upside. I make the 30 to 60,000 on that deal. This method of the takedown method, if you're a wholesaler, this is a way for you to double to quadruple your revenue without doing any more deals. Imagine that. Double to quadruple your revenue doing the same number of deals. Difference is you bought them and resold them instead of assigning them to other investors. That's the difference. That's it. You're still buying at the same discount. What makes the ideal takedown property? Well, it can't be rural. If it's rural, it's going to be hard to resell. It's harder to get your head around the value. Make sure you're within 45 minutes of a metro market. If you're outside that, it gets harder. Make sure that you're not doing low income. Stay out of the low income under 100,000. It's economies of scale. Your cost starts to go up. I am assuming here that we're pushing up over 200,000. That's where the 70% works really well. If you get down into the 100 or you're buying something for 30,000, it's worth 90,000, you know, that type of thing, this percentage has to be exponentially bigger. So then you're shooting for 40 to 50% of the as-is value. And make sure it's clean. It's got to be clean and livable. It doesn't have to be. You can still buy it and resell it and make money if it's cash only or needs a ton of work. But the way that you get the most eyeballs, the way that you get the market very excited about your deal, the way you get multiple showings and multiple offers is it's clean and it's livable because now it will attract a retail buyer who's looking for a slight discount. They're willing to buy it at the as-is value and do sweat equity. These are your do-it-yourselfers. They're going to go in there and redo the floors and the cabinets and the counters and all that. You're bringing it to the market at a deal and letting a retail buyer pay market value for it. And that's why it needs to be desirable, right? It needs to be in a neighborhood where there's demand. It needs to be in a hot market, or the better the market, the more people are going to want your deal and the faster it sells. So you're not sitting on it very long. These are the ideal criteria for a takedown deal. If you get one at 70% of the as-is value, I will fund those deals for you 100%. 100%. I'll fund the entire purchase for you to buy it, take it down, and resell it. Now I'll put a link in the description below where you can apply. It's an application for funding. Make sure though you're deep. I would be at 65% just to really make sure you've got a good deal, right? But if you've got a great takedown deal at 70% of the value and it fits this criteria I talked about, click that link in the description, apply, and we'll see if we can get you that 100% funding. Also, I love to buy these. So if you get a takedown deal and you can bring it to me, I'll buy it and pay you a finder fee. I'll pay you $10,000 for every deal you bring me that's a good takedown deal. To learn more about how you can go find deals like this and get paid $10,000 for every deal you bring me, go to my10kcheck.com and register for a free training to learn all the details. Okay guys, I hope you're excited about doing this type of deal, and I'll see you on the next video.